So I was thinking as I was preparing the questions and whatnot. So you got into property restoration as the last economic downturn, the recession in 08, 09. Is that something that you've thought about? Is there any nuggets that have come out of thinking through that relates to then and now and how you guys are conducting business?
Yeah. So again, the 2008 crisis was a personal crisis for our family or whatever, that then it led me to go back into employment. So I think just in general, and that's been one of the best things in my life, like having this opportunity and growing and all of the things that have come out of it, like that would have never happened without that crisis. So I think that's the first one. It's just that a lot of times when we're in something that's really difficult and it feels really heavy and really bad, but the change that it forces in, you to take, and some of the steps that you end up having to go down, and the road that you end up can actually be, one of the biggest blessings in your life when you look back on it. So I do think that crisis can lead to opportunity.
Let me hit you with some knowledge.
That crisis can lead to opportunity. So I would say that first. Secondly, one of the things that we did in the 2008 is that we were really careful about cash. And I think everybody's kind of talking about that. But we've always kind of run the operations to, be slim, be efficient, manage overhead, all of those kind of things. And so, we never really kind of got into leveraging for our equipment or the next thing. We're also all careful about growing at, with the cash that was generated from the business. So being really careful about not over leveraging. And then the other thing is we got really careful about collections.
If you're good at something, never do it for free.
If you're not on top of your AR, now's the time to really get on top of your AR, because that's one of the things that we saw. So yeah, insurance kept paying and all that kind of stuff. But if those checks went to the homeowner and they were in a tight situation and stuff like that, trying to get that money later. So being really strict about your policy there, and working with the insurance company to figure out what their policy is about getting work offers, like anything with a two-party check. Following that money all the way. So, and all it takes sometimes is really great communication with the homeowner. So they know what to expect, and when that check is getting there, and you're saying, okay, a check's coming tomorrow, somebody will be by to pick it up, all of those kind of things. So you're not sitting there waiting, because if you're waiting 3 weeks and then try to go follow up, it can be a difficult situation depending upon, the situation that they're in. And so trying to be, understanding and compassionate about that, but also know where your money is. So that was one thing. Another thing is that we found really great talent.
Epic comeback starts right here.
In fact, one of our superstars, we grabbed them at this time in 2008, when people were getting laid off, and he was in commercial construction, and they had just laid off a bunch of people, and he was pretty high up there, and had a lot of knowledge, a lot of education, and a lot of experience, and we were able to, pick him up. And at the time, we were a small company. I mean, that's talent we would have never been able to attract at another time. So I think, again, there's opportunity, and so look at your talent pool and who you can grab.
And now it's time for a not-so-subtle ad break. Are you familiar with our podcast within the podcast? Yeah, that's right. I'm talking about Pro versus Joe Podcast, which is the podcast within the DYOJO Podcast.
37 minutes. Engage.
So the idea here is we take a Joe, somebody who, Brian Close with All American Real Estate Services out of Tacoma, Washington, familiar with construction, very versed in property management and other complex systems and, organizations, but pivoting their business into property restoration, insurance world, right? Non-program work thus far. Praise the Lord! And And then myself, the quote-unquote pro. I know, crappy choice, but, you got to roll with who you got.
On Location Podcast. Pro vs. Joe.
And so we talk about the industry from two different perspectives. So it's really cool to hear Brian coming into the industry, fresh set of eyes, learning about the nuances of restoration, mitigation, and repairs. They're mostly focusing on repairs as they work with a lot of mitigation contractors. And then, I get to share tidbits and information from things that I've learned over the years.
Pros vs. Joe.
So please take a peek at Pro vs. Joe Podcast, the podcast within the podcast. And you can check that out as well on the DYOJOPodcast.com.
Pros vs. Joe.
Well, I think that seems to be a lot of the conversations we're having, and with a lot of people, is it's both on a personal level and people with families and those kinds of things. I can remember in 2008, like, it was devastating. We had our own company, so it went from things were going on a great clip to just dead. And so it was one of the hardest times, personally and professionally, but also some of our best memories, as a family. And like you said, when you persevere, it prepares you for next. And as companies, that's, thinking through exactly like you're talking about, having cash flow and being what it means to be healthy, is critical. So,
Yeah. And I would also say, like, emergencies that are like tragedies that feel like the end of the world. Like, I'm sure at that time that was devastating to lose your business, to do all that kind of stuff. And then if you can fast forward and look where you are now, you're like, okay, I landed. Okay. Like, it wasn't the end of the world.
We will not vanish without a fight. We're going to live on. We're going to survive.
I ended up in a good position. I'm doing great things. I'm still in the industry, all of those kind of things. Like, sometimes, it's not necessarily what we want or the ideal, but it still turns out okay.
Yeah. I believe it's Mother Teresa. She has the quote, I know God won't give me anything that I can't handle. I just wish he didn't trust me with so much. So, and it was cool. We had friends and family and things that rallied around us, and definitely lessons learned. It makes you grateful, once I got employed, about a year later with Belfour, and it makes you a lot more grateful for, your opportunities and those kinds of things. So, and I'm sure that's part of the superstar you're talking about. It's devastating to lose a career and then to get a new opportunity, and it puts things in perspective, when people give you an opportunity. So,
yeah.
Man, I thank you to Rachel Stewart for coming on the DYOJO podcast and sharing her insights. I can honestly say, I'm gushing about the book, but I can honestly say you can actually see my notes in the book. As I was reading the book, it was crystallizing in my mind some of the things that I needed to be more intentional about, with the DYOJO. And so, with her encouragement, and I did reach out, I talked to her via the phone shortly after read the book and prior to publishing my review of it. The reviews on Restoration and Remediation Magazine, also on my website, thedyojo.com. But, honestly, it is one of the best books I've read in recent years, on personal and professional developments. I love the quote that Rachel gave. It was, crisis can lead to opportunity. Thank you for listening to the DYOJOPodcast.com DYOJO Podcast.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard.